Today I'll be showing you how I make Mary Berry's apple cake. Many years ago, I used to love watching Mary Berry because I just love sitting in her kitchen, so to speak. And although her original recipe is apples in the cake, I usually use apples and pear and occasionally try something different, which you'll see at the end. And this video was actually requested by a number of members in my family, so I thought it was time to put it up. I stumbled across a bit of a problem. I didn't have any cinnamon in my pantry. I only had cinnamon sticks. So I thought, surely they'll grate up on the microplane. Is that what it's called? But don't try this at home. It was a pain in the behind. I have doubled this recipe this time. I usually do. But I've added 1.5 cups of self-raising flour, followed by 150 grams of softened butter. And then what I've done is got my pastry cutter, I think they're called, and I've sort of cut the butter in with the flour so it's like a crummy texture. I then add 3/4 cup of raw sugar and 3/4 cup of brown sugar and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And then I just give it a nice quick mix together just so that everything's blended through nicely before I add the eggs. Now we add 6 eggs, but I always crack my eggs into a glass first and then add to a bowl just in case there's a yucky one or one's off or whatever, because you don't want to waste all that. Then I added it all to the other ingredients and gave it a really thorough mix together. And now it's time to move on to the fruit. So I've peeled and cut up, like diced up, 2.5 apples. Also 2.5 pears. The other half a pear and apple I keep for the end of it. You'll see what I do. And I add the diced up apple and pear to the mix and just put aside the 2 halves. And then just give your fruit just a really gentle stir through. So I got out my 2 bread loaf tins and I thought, there'll be enough batter for, cake batter for both of these. So I've greased the tins, added the flour, just so I don't have the cake stick. However, I then realised that no, I didn't have enough cake batter for both tins, so I scraped it out of one and put it into the other, just so it'd be a better size. Otherwise, they're going to be really thin cakes. And now it's time to get the half apple and half pear that you reserved just before, and you slice them both up really fine, and then add them like facing down into the cake, and you make sure there's a little bit sticking out still. And then I just grabbed a little bit more brown sugar, put it in my hand and sprinkled it over the top. I then baked it in an oven at 140 degrees Celsius for about 50 minutes or so until it was cooked through. But not long after I got it out the oven, we got quite a few visitors come over, so the cake all went that day. A few weeks later, one of the visitors we had was my cousin who came to look after Mum, and she requested that I made this cake again for her. However, this time I had some sliced up apples that were soaking in the fridge in some water, and that I need to use up. And I also had a couple of slices of tin pineapple. So here I go again with cutting up the fruit to put in there. But as I said, this recipe you can add any fruit. It just works wonderfully. And I made this one in my KitchenAid. I didn't make this one like stirring by hand. And I forgot to actually put the sliced fruit on top because I thought there was enough fruit in this one. And this time I baked it in an old bain-marie tray in the oven for about the same temperature and time. And it still came out beautiful. It was so moist though. I definitely want to make it with the pineapple again. I forgot to take a photo of it coming out of the oven, but here it is all chopped up, ready to take away.